Hi guys, I'm Mike and this is Indy Fanatics, and as you can see I'm not joined by usually Stephen to the side of me on a kind of sofa. I actually have Rick next to me, and if you've obviously followed us on F1 Fanatics you'll know that obviously me and Rick, and we had Mandy there as well, who's also part of Race Fan Heaven, who joined us before, but first collaboration on Indy Fanatics, and obviously Indy is your passion, Rick, so yeah, it is great to kind of have you on and chat a podcast.
Thank you so much, Mike. Honestly, number one, thank you for inviting me. Always love chatting with you. We have a great time. But I got to be honest with you, I'm extremely excited that you guys have decided to start an actual all Indy show. You know me, I'm Mr. IndyCar. You know, I love F1. I love all racing, but I love IndyCar. IndyCar is my first love. And it is really, really cool to see you guys on the other side of the world from us. Starting to really recognize IndyCar and to see it enough to actually do a show. You know, we have a lot of crossover now. There's more drivers crossing over between F1 and Indy. And you know me, I mean, I love F1. No offense to any F1 fans, I promise. Racing in IndyCar is amazing. It's so equal and it's so great. So it's great to see that you guys are doing a show. Anything I can do to help, I'm here. I'm on it. You call me anytime, and I'm ready to talk IndyCar. So I want to see a huge success. If you're watching this now, tell all your friends you need to subscribe to is it Indy Fanatics?
Indy Fanatics. We keep it simple. F1 Fanatics,
channel,
and then
right?
we put Indy in front.
Separate channel, right?
Yeah, separate channel.
So definitely everybody needs to follow this. This is going to be a great show. It's great to see.
Thank you very much, Rick. And yeah, I know IndyCar is your big love, and it is fantastic. Obviously, you know, I remember actually you convinced me. I was like, right, I've kind of gone in and out of IndyCar, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to give this season a proper go. And me and Stephen have just absolutely loved it. It's a brilliant series. And well, what we're going to talk about today, well, actually, first of all, before we get into that, do you want to, obviously, I've introduced Race Fan Heaven, but do you want to tell our kind of listeners what Race Fan Heaven is and kind of what the podcast is all about?
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So Race Fan Heaven, I've been a race fan forever. I have a tiny bit of radio experience back in the day. I was never a big professional or anything. Technically, I'm not a professional journalist, but I would call myself a fanalist. I've been a fan forever. And I just decided that it would be fun to really, you know, go online and make a show out of it. And start talking racing. And of course, since Indy was my first love, Indy's the big thing. We kind of hooked up with you guys through the F1 channels, and Mandy, of course, is a huge F1 fan. So that kind of rolled in, and we're going to do sports NASCAR racing. You know, we're in the US, so there's a lot of different series that aren't as popular over there that are popular here, and vice versa, of course. But we're trying to expand the channel and just cover racing from a fan's perspective. We're not a typical site where we do statistics and quotes, and we're more like, here's what we think as fans. We want to bring fans in and talk like race fans do, because that's what we are, is we're race fans. So that's what Race Fan Heaven is about. You can check us out on our website, racefanheaven.com. I do write blog posts once in a while, so there are some stories there. We are on Twitter big at Race Fan Heaven. We are on Facebook. Facebook, we do a little, not as much. Twitter's our big thing, but we do Facebook, Race Fan Heaven again. Look there. And then on YouTube, just search Race Fan Heaven. You'll find our shows. We have a lot of archive shows. We started with podcasts, and we just did audio, and now we have audio and video. So there's some of our old shows if you want to listen in. It's kind of old news, but some of it's fun. We like to have a lot of fun. So please follow us, check us out. We appreciate your platform to let us expand. You know, we feel like we want everybody to be a race fan. We want everybody to be an IndyCar fan, an F1 fan, and a sports car fan, and in all racing. If it has a motor, we like watching it. So we're all about promoting that for everybody. So check us out. We love to talk racing. So that's it.
There we go. That's a pitch and a half. And I can't obviously recommend following these guys enough, guys, because, you know, that's how we kind of first came in contact with each other. I remember listening to your podcast, and you know, we thought to do it for podcast talking F1 now. We're here talking Indy today, and we have the kind of same philosophy. We're fans. We just love talking about racing, and it is going to be brilliant talking about racing today. So obviously, you know, last week on our first podcast on Indy Fanatics, we obviously rounded up the Mid-Ohio race, and a little bit kind of leaning into this episode, we spoke about big news in that 7-time NASCAR champion Jimmy Johnson would be racing for Chip Ganassi Racing. Well, after that, on the day of that release, but we'd already recorded, another guy who got announced, who's a former champion returning to IndyCar in terms of Sebastian Bourdais. So it's kind of like a silly season driver transfer talk episode, and also a big news in terms of a race for next season. We will see the Music City GP. Obviously, Nashville will be hosting a street race, which will be an absolutely incredible event, I'm sure. And yeah, it's certainly exciting to go from there. But we're going to start off on the drivers on that front. Let's go in with, obviously, the former champ himself, Sebastian Bourdais, joining up with A.J.Foyt Racing. Obviously, they've got the historic name of a legend of IndyCar, but they've kind of struggled really to find any real success since the 90s, haven't they? So Sebastian Bourdais, a good signing for them?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could talk for a whole hour just about the history of A.J.Foyt Racing. If you don't know IndyCar, you probably at least know A.J.Foyt. And much as I love A.J.Foyt, not a knock on him at all, but he's an old school guy. And so when he stopped driving, he of course kept a team, an IndyCar team. IndyCar's his whole life. The Indy 500 is, he said, what made his whole life, his whole career. And AJ's a different cat. He really is. He's all old school. He either loves you or he hates you. There's no in between. There's no gray area with him. And IndyCar sort of passed him by. You know, when he was a driver, you know, it was all, you know, I mean, guys were still building cars in their garages, believe it or not, for Indy. Wow. Yeah, that's, you know, that's sort of the era that he came from, all the way up through into the 80s. There were still teams that would just run Indy, and that's it. That's all they would do all year, and they would build a car all year and show up at Indy and try to qualify. And that's sort of the era that he came from. So when IndyCar got more and more technologically advanced and got into, you know, computer simulations and all the things that modern racing encompasses, they kind of fell behind.
Professional is the best way to say it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And AJ really, he was so old school, and he's self-admittedly a stubborn old guy. And so he had the name, but the team really fell off, and it never really caught up. You know, you've seen F1 fans will see, you know, can remember some examples of that as well, where teams sort of technologically fall behind for one reason or another. So the Foyt Racing has always been around, huge name, but they haven't run well. And his son Larry Foyt took the team over as far as running the team a few years ago. AJ's getting on in years now, but they still haven't quite. They don't have a ton of money compared to the Penske's or the Ganassis, so they haven't been able to buy the best talent as far as engineering, but they've slowly kind of accumulated pieces. They've pulled in a great engineer here and a great driver there, and at COTA this year at spring training, the before COVID came in, the deal was Sebastian was actually going to run a few races for the team. And not a whole season, but I want to say it was 4 or 5 road courses, I believe is what it was. I don't think there was any ovals on his schedule. Then when COVID hit, it blew everything up, because he already had a deal in sports cars and a bunch of other things, and basically knocked him out of being in the car at all until this part of the year. But my point is, at COTA, immediately he was fast. I mean, he was top of the charts, and everybody when we were at spring training, we got to go. Luckily, it's in our hometown, but everybody was saying, wow, you know, we're looking at the timing board, the timing charts for practice, going, wow, there's a Foyt car in the top 5. And it was there for all of spring training. And that was probably a lot due to his talent, but also his experience. So him coming in is a big deal for A.J.Foyt Racing. Robin Miller in Racer Magazine this week online posted a story asking if that was the final piece that A.J.Foyt Racing needs to really become a top team. So that's going to be great to see. The rest of the team, they're probably going to run a second car, but right now that's completely up in the air. Tony Kanaan might run ovals, might run Indy for him. Not really sure. It's all about the money right now. Whoever shows up with money is probably going to get that second seat. So that's a great thing to see this week. Sebastian was over the moon. As a matter of fact, I was all excited last night because I tweeted how great it was to see him back, and he liked my tweet. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, Sebastian!"
Oh gosh, Seb, he likes it.
Boy. But that shows his level of excitement. I think he probably liked everybody's tweet that tweeted, and he tweeted a nice little message about how he was, so appreciative of everybody welcoming him back and that kind of thing. So that's going to be a big deal for A.J.Foyt Racing. I think that's going to be a quantum leap for them as far as performance next year.
And that was one of my big likes, actually, of the whole situation, because, he is obviously on in years now. He's 41 years of age. But I love that about IndyCar in terms of it's a family. It's kind of welcome back. It was just all positive messages about seeing him back. And, he was one of those in the transfer as last season who was kind of this guy who ended up without a seat, and it was kind of a bit like, whoa,
he was unceremoniously, I will say unceremoniously dumped. He really was. He was done wrong last year.
Yeah.
And don't go all into that. I don't want to say anything negative about teams and so forth, but sometimes in racing you get caught in a spot that's not good. For whatever reason, he was caught in a spot that he was, it's kind of like a musical chairs game, and he was the last one out, but everybody forgot to tell him.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, you're not back next year. So he was scrambling. So it's great to see him back. It really is.
And in fairness, in terms of years that you could have missed, it is probably not the worst season that he would have been able to see by. I mean, we've had a brilliant season. There's been some great races within it, but obviously the chaos throughout, hardly, obviously, tracks not having fans, limited fans and stuff like that. It's worse, but he is obviously going to get now to go back to obviously Indy road course in the Harvest GP. He's going to race, I'm pretty sure, the rest of the season for AJ Foyt.
The last 3 races,
and then it's just
yeah, which is a great launch into 2021 for them. So that's a really good thing. Yeah.
It's just fantastic for him to get with the team, isn't he? Start to know those engineers. Obviously, like you said, running testing, and I had some idea for that. But
sure,
now you can start building as a team, that project, building those relationships, and that really, especially I think more in IndyCar with the spec series and the engineers, that those relationships are really key. Going for that. But obviously, at 41, we've seen age is just a number in IndyCar. And Scott, he's on the verge of a 6th IndyCar title. And obviously he's 40. Takuma Sato won his 2nd Indy 500 at the age of 43. He can still have some very good years for AJ Foyt. So I completely agree with you. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for a guy who was on the market for them, and they've made the move stick. And it's one of these other, like you said, slow accumulation of good parts to make them a better team again.
It is. IndyCar is really interesting right now because there's an old guard that are in their late 30s and into their 40s. Like you said, Sato, Will Power's up there, Scott Dixon. A lot of these guys are aging, but are still very, very quick. But you also have this whole new crop of kids, Pato Award, Oliver Askew, Renus VK, Colton Herta, that are, 21, 20, 22 years old, that are quick as well. So you've got this real dichotomy right now. You've got this this group of very experienced, fast guys, and you've got this group of aggressive, really quick young guys. When those really quick young guys learn to really manage fuel and tire deg and all those things that they have to deal with, that the older guys have the experience with, they're going to be the ones to beat, because you can see it. You can see them progressing. You can see like a Pato Award start to learn. Like he had 2 races this year that he probably should have won, but at the end his tires were gone, and in his, it was a learning experience for him. He in IndyCar, everything is so equal that the tiniest things, tire management, fuel management throughout the race, can make all the difference in a race, because the cars are very, very equal. So those type of things take experience, which is why the experienced guys have success. but the young guys are just super quick. I mean, they're amazingly quick. So it's going to be fun to watch as the next couple of years go by, the changes that happen. I think next year is going to be the start of that. I think you're going to see a lot of younger guys winning races. I think you're going to see some older guys looking at retirement, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. It's exciting. And, you know, Pato has been one of the standout performers of the season. Obviously, he's not a rookie technically this year, but it is his only first full season. And with the McLaren backing of now Arrow's team, it's only going to make that team go from strength to strength.
For sure. Pato's the real deal. Pato's the real deal. He not only is he very quick, but he's also very smart. And on the sponsor side and the personality side, he's amazing. I saw him at spring training at Coda this year again, and last year too. Both times, just like you're too young to remember, but the Beatles, for example. Okay, when they came to America, or when they got really big. I mean, when they went to Japan, it was like just pandemonium and chaos. Well, Pato had that on a small scale. I mean, he's really good with fans, and he's originally from Mexico, and of course down here in southern United States, we're close to Mexico. There's a lot of Mexican fans and a lot of crossover there, and he has developed a tremendous following. And my fantasy is that Sergio Perez comes to IndyCar.
That was going to be my next point in terms of I was going, as we talk about McLaren and Arrows, we'll go with the first skeptical seat. Sergio Perez, obviously from our F1 following, I desperately would love him to go into IndyCar, because I don't see an F1 seat that is worthy of his talent in terms of he'll just be in a team that will be behind the midfield in the hope that maybe 2022 might work out for him. Wherever he goes to IndyCar, like, this guy has all the kind of, he'll learn the tire management, but he's very good at tire management, and the kind of natural pace is very quick in terms of that, and how he manages race and racecraft. If you then put like him in McLaren Arrows alongside Pato, you've got this almost like Mexican super team for them, which would be mega for their kind of fans supporting wise. I just think it would be a dream combo for IndyCar, getting a big name, and for Arrows as well.
Well, and IndyCar would love to get a race in Mexico, maybe even two. And the races in the past in Mexico have been phenomenal. The fan support down there is unbelievable. It's like an F1 race as far as, I mean, they have, I think the last IndyCar race they had there, they had over 100,000 fans. I mean, it was just pandemonium. It was chaos. It was so huge. And those guys would be superstars. It'd be the Pato and Checo show, you know? And I think there's a lot of forces, you know, on the back end of, you know, the business end could make, sponsors, you know, companies from Mexico that could, you know, get some money involved and make that happen. And with McLaren, and of course, Zach Brown's no dummy. He knows how to make those things happen. So I would like to see that happen. And it very well could. It very well could. The next couple months could be very interesting.
I think definitely, well, Checo is one of the most heavily backed drivers in Formula One. So if he brings that across and those guys, you know, want to capitalize on the Indy market, hands down, I mean, that they go crazy for him in F1. So if he came across to IndyCar, you no doubt there would be an Indy race in Mexico, and it would be huge, I think, for the sport as a really big move. Obviously, putting IndyCar a little bit on the map, because you might get some more F1 fans come across because they want to follow Checo in terms of there. But I think it would be a good move for all parties around. I kind of have this gut feeling that he might end up at Haas in Formula One, because he seems a little bit desperate to stay in Formula One, and they hope that a better suit might pop up. But IndyCar for me, I think would be his best career move. But you don't know with these things.
That'd be a difficult decision, you know. When you've been in F1 that long, and if you think, well, I'll step away from it, well, okay, you know, for a year, there's no guarantee you're coming back, you know, especially, you know, you're getting older and all these things. You know, if you're Vettel or, you know, Max or Lewis Hamilton, or those guys can step away for a year and come back no problem. But he's kind of on the borderline of that, I think. And so I think IndyCar would be a great move for him. Of course, he'd take a pretty big pay cut, but
yeah, that's the thing. But I think his sponsors would be able to pick up a lot of that slack, certainly on that front. But yeah, it just, it looks for him as a team who he showed loyalty, helped save from going into bankruptcy, and performing pretty damn well for the team. For that team to act you out, I would say that your time in F1's pretty limited, because for some reason your face don't fit in the mold. So it's probably the time to step away. But F1 is the hallowed ground for so many drivers.
Come on, we'll take you.
It's so difficult to walk away from it, isn't it? But Checo is definitely a name that we could see in IndyCar for 2021, I think.
Yep. Gosh, what else do we have going on?
I think the next one I was going to bring up was Scott McClockin. Obviously, Aussie supercar star for Team Penske. Confirmed, when this comes out, it was confirmed last week that he would be racing in the St. Petersburg race. With it kind of feels pretty much that he's going to be taking that number 3 car full time in the 2021 season. I think, it's not officially confirmed, but you kind of feel everything's there. Obviously, it's taking Helio Castroneves' number for that car. But I think it's fantastic to see Scott, because he's a hugely talented race car driver. And he really impressed actually in the spring testing as well, didn't he?
He really did. He was quick straight away, number one. Also a great guy. We got to meet him, talk to him at Media Day, and he's pumped. He's pumped about coming to IndyCar. But he was quick. I mean, got in the car, and I think the second lap was quick. I mean, he wasted no time. And it's interesting with Penske. Team Penske is very tight-lipped about things. You don't really hear a lot of rumors about them. And I don't want to say Roger came out at Indy this year because there's a lot of talk early this year, because you've got Will Power, you've got Joseph Newgarden, and you've got Simon Pagenaud on that team. Apparently, Will and Simon, this is the last year on their contract. Everybody is saying that now. So early in the year, and Will hasn't been running as good as he would like. Simon won 500 last year and had a great year. So there was a lot of talk about, maybe Will Power is on the hot seat here. If he doesn't have a great year, maybe he's on the way out. Roger came out at Indy and stated that he expected all 3 of them would be back. Now, however, it's been a crazy year. A lot of things happened this year.
A little crazy.
On the dotted line, who knows? And then all of a sudden, hey, Scott McLaughlin's coming over for the last race, and he was already slated. It looked like he was going to do some races this year before COVID, blew everything up. But it looked like, maybe they were grooming him to come in anyway. Elio was never going to come back with Penske full time next year. That Roger. That was not going to happen. I can tell you that. I don't know anything insider. I'm just going off of history and what I know about that team. Elio's still a great driver, but he wasn't coming back full time. Montoya wasn't coming back full time. One thing the Penske organization does is, number one, they like winners, but number two, they're always looking. They're not looking this year. They have like a 5-year plan, and they're very smart that way. And so they're always looking for a younger driver or somebody that's going to have more longevity. They like to get a driver, groom them, and keep them until they're done with them, and then get another one. And that's just how they like to do business, and that's fine. That's nothing wrong with that. But so Elio, Indy 500, sure, of course, but coming back full time wasn't going to happen. Now maybe, if he could get sponsors together, he could come back full-time with another team. He still has the talent. He's still hugely popular in IndyCar, one of the most popular drivers. He and Tony Kanaan are probably the 2 most popular, really, as far as fan appreciation and awareness. But I don't think we're going to see either one of them full-time next year. Maybe Elio. I think TK, maybe ovals. We'll talk about that a little bit, possibly with Foyt, possibly with somebody else. But again, these team owners, you got these kids knocking down doors every day that are very, very quick, and it's really hard to make that decision. But you look at what Arrow McLaren did. They made the decision last year, went with 2 young guys right off the bat when they could have kept Hinch or got another more experienced driver. They went young, and so far it's working out. So I think Helio and TK are both done full time in IndyCar, bar an amazing sponsor comes along with $5 million for Helio to run. It's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. And I wish he was back full time. I love the guy, but
hey, that's racing for you, Rick, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's not a cheap hobby. Motorsport is an expensive thing, and money does come into it. And in fairness, both to TK and Helio, it's not like they've had careers that they've been rushed out of early. They've had fantastic and glittered careers, and it would just really be for them, still obviously shining, but just kind of being there for the fans, and the fans going,
sure.
Oh, I still got to see TK at this race, I got to see Helio at this race, type of thing. But I would be surprised if Penske did get rid of Willpower, Pagano for the next season for Scott full-time. I think I would like to see them go the 4 cars. That would be the ideal one. But I feel Will's probably done the, funnily enough, although he's the last one to win, I would say he's probably more on it than what Simon's been.
Yeah.
Over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think so. It's been it's been such a weird season in so many ways. Willpower had bad luck, but then he's been quick. Simon's been quick and not quick. It's been 1 week he's quick, the next week he's not quick. So it's really hard to gauge that one. Roger, Mr. Penske, said, a year or so ago, actually probably 2 years ago, that he wouldn't run 4 cars again. 3 was his max. That was it. But things change. He has his hands full running IndyCar now and the Indy 500, and he's sort of given more of the day-to-day decisions to Tim Cindric and the management of the team itself. So he's kind of pulled back from that. I'm not sure how much he's making those decisions anymore, if they're 100% his. I'm sure he's involved, but he might be letting them do some more things now. So you gotta wonder. I mean, like I said, until there's a signature on a contract, who knows for sure. So it could be interesting to see. And if McClockin comes in and goes to St. Pete and is crazy quick and has a great weekend and does better, you got to think the management's going to sit back and go, what are we going to do? And of course, the sponsor dollars, then that's what comes in, is how much money do we have? Can we run 4 cars, et cetera? So there's another one to watch. Silly season.
And it's massively interesting, obviously, being one of the big teams, because obviously Andretti is the other real big name within the sport. We spoke about in Mid-Ohio. They've had a crazy season. Like, it's taken them to the second race at Mid-Ohio to get their first race win. And it came all at once with a 1, 2, 3. But I imagine their seats I haven't really heard any rumors that there's going to be any change up there, because I know obviously they have the 3 main Andretti cars, and then it's the 2 Andretti kind of B teams almost. They're kind of sponsored, aren't they? They're associated Andretti teams.
Well, you have Rossi and Herta, both are under contract. They're not going anywhere. Even if their contract was up at the end of this year, they're still not going anywhere. Trust me. They're keeping them.
Absolutely not.
Marco, don't want to get into a whole Marco discussion. That's a whole nother show. But Marco's not going anywhere until he decides to retire. He's part owner of the team. He's, he's family. As long as he wants to drive, he's going to be there. The other 2 are a little tricky. Ryan Hunter-Reay has been really loyal to Andretti. Andretti gave him his shot back when he really got good. I think he's been with the team, 10 years now. It's been a while. And he's still quick. Hadn't had a lot of great results, but he's still top of the charts most of the time. But there's a sponsor issue there from what I'm hearing, sponsor dollars. So that's a little shaky right now. Zach Veach is very shaky, quite frankly. His sponsor loves him. He's a sponsor's dream. He's a great kid. He's great with the fans and all that, but his results.
It's been poor this year, hasn't it? I mean, he has been the poorest out of the Andretti by quite a long way out of the main team, I would say.
Well, and you've got Rossi has had a poor year, but it's mostly from bad luck. Beach has had a bad year. It's mostly from not being fast. And you got to wonder when you've got a Colton Herta and a Rossi, and they're running up front, top 5, and you've got the same information, the same equipment, and week after week after week, you're 18th, 19th, 20th. At some point, things get ugly. And
they're going to take a look at someone else, aren't they?
He's a great kid, but it's a performance-based business, and if the performance isn't there, they'll have to make a change. And his contract's up at the end of this year, so that one you've got a couple seats there that are shaky at best. I think Ryan Hunter-Reay, as long as they get money, I think Ryan Hunter-Reay is still there, but I think Veach is on the hot seat as far as Andretti, and of course the results, like you said, they've had a rough year. Had a great Indy looked great until with Marco on the pole and all that, but then the results didn't really come through. They've been up and down. A couple of tracks they were quick, and then a couple of tracks they were completely out to lunch. So, and it's really these double headers are funny because when they're squeezing in the races like they have this year, in the past you'd have a weekend, a normal race weekend, right? So you'd prepare for the race weekend, you do your simulations, you try your sim setups and all those things, and you'd show up at the track and you were either fast or not. With the double headers now, if you show up that weekend and you're not fast for 2 races.
And that's a big hit.
Exactly. You don't show up on Saturday and you've missed the setup completely with your whole team and you're out to lunch, and Sunday you magically win. Your setups are kind of the same. So it makes it more, the compressed schedule has really hurt them in that range, but they'll bounce back. They're good. They bounced back at Mid-Ohio. They had a great setup, obviously, and everybody probably copied each other on that. And they had a 1, 2, 3 on Sunday. So that was good. But as far as the drivers, I'm sorry, I'm going way out in the weeds there. But as far as drivers and next year, I think Veach is on the hot seat and Hunter-Reay is a little bit shaky.
Yeah, I'd say Ryan Hunter-Reay probably is more safe out of the 2. That podium definitely, I think, helps him at Mid-Ohio just to kind of secure it. Exactly. And, Zach Veach, like you said, he would be the one going, well, maybe that's someone who might rumors, because he did technically run for them at the Indy 500 this year, and another one who was kind of unceremoniously ousted from a seat and popular driver was Hinch. And is he a possible returnee in terms of full time to the sport with Andretti or with anyone else?
Hinch is, frankly, I was thinking about this yesterday. He was the odd man out last year, but still, I mean, massively popular, massively fan popular. Everybody in the series likes him. It would be a shame to lose him. He was the odd man out with the whole Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson thing last year. But I'm hearing crickets about him. He put together a sponsor and rides this year, but they have not really said they love him. He ran Indy, ran a few more races. The sponsor's new to the sport. He found them. It was a really interesting story the way he found them. He one of the CEO or VP of marketing or something for this company, this tech company, saw his Instagram and contacted him on Instagram.
Wow.
And said, gee.
If ever you want a kind of message to say the power of social media, right?
It was awesome. It was a great story. I'm a big social media guy, and it was great. And that's how they connected. And lo and behold, in no time at all, like 6-8 weeks, boom, he had a deal. He had money. He had, Indy 500, a few other races. Whether they're committed and have the money to roll that into next year, nobody knows. Like I'm saying right now, like as I went through the whole driver lineup for next year, he's not even on my list right now because I'm not hearing anything. I think he should be, but I'm not hearing anything about, hey, he's got this deal and they've got money and he's just looking for a team. It's kind of like he's in a gray zone right now.
Well, I know probably he would want to be racing for sure. He's still got so much to offer racing wise, but someone who massively has benefited from him being out that musical chair game was NBC because he's been brilliant on the coverage.
Absolutely.
Hasn't it? Having him, at the races down in the pit lane, it's been great having that driver perspective, on comms. And
yes, he's a shoe. If he decides to retire, he's a shoe in for race coverage. There's no question about that. Even the commentators 3 or 4 races ago, I don't remember if it was Indy or maybe it was before Indy, doesn't matter. I was listening to I think it was one of the qualifying shows, and they were saying something about, one of us is going to lose a job because he's too good. One of us is out of here. When he decides to be here, he's going to be here. And I think that's the case, but he's still young. He definitely still wants to be driving. He'd have an immediate career in TV, but again, it's really odd. I'm not hearing much about it. And now then that could be because there's nothing going on or because there's something really big going on. Who knows?
That's a big one, isn't it?
I think he's a shoe-in at Andretti, and I think maybe Veach, I'm sorry to say, but again, there's a lot of stuff we don't know, contracts, different things behind the scenes, but he needs to be in the series. He really needs to be in the series for sure.
I just think he's one of the great characters, and one of the big things about IndyCar is the drivers can be themselves so much, and they can, really kind of display that. And Hinch is one of those great guys who adds to the sport in a really positive way. And like I said, the massive thing with IndyCar is, we drum it into so much on coverage. Obviously, I'm not there in the States. Type of thing. I can only view it as like a distant outsider from watching the TV coverage from here, but the fans are such at the heart of the sport, and the way that the drivers, the teams interact with their fans and everything. Hinch is one of those guys that you just feel is an asset to the sport in so many ways.
For sure. And you touched on the fan access, and it's kind of hard to describe, but in IndyCar, the average fan can buy a garage pass. So for much of the weekend, they can literally walk around in the garage area, and drivers hang out. Drivers have no problem, taking photos, signing autographs. And we're talking, of course, practice day, quali day, and even race day. So there's a tremendous amount of access, and the drivers are very open to it as well. Every race weekend, they have a fan fest where they all the drivers, I think it's required, but they all come. They have an area, and for like an hour or 2 hours, they just sign autographs. That's all they do. And so that it's a really big thing with IndyCar that you can meet. You literally can go meet and shake hands. Well, I don't know if you can shake hands anymore, but hopefully next year it's all good. But yeah, like from 6 feet away. But you can actually talk to your favorite driver, and it's not a rare occurrence. It's very easy to do. You buy a pass and you're in, and you just kind of hang around the transporter. And if you hang around the transporter 15 minutes before the next practice session, they're going to run right into you. So you will get to see them, believe me. So that's a really good. That's one of the things I love about IndyCar.
And goes from there. But I think that's probably, unless you had any standout names that you wanted to mention, I reckon that's probably quite a good point to go. Obviously, we've spoken about the main ones who feel pretty confirmed coming into the series, and a couple of obviously rumored possible seats coming into it. It might be a good point to move on to talking about the Music City GP.
Well, I tell you what, though, I will hold you off on one little thing. We didn't talk about Chip Ganassi Racing.
Of course we didn't. Yes, obviously we mentioned it in the podcast last week, but yeah, huge news for IndyCar, isn't it? Having Jimmy Johnson coming in.
I've got a little backstory on this for you that I kind of knew this was coming. I just didn't know where. But when we went to, I'll make this quick, but we went to spring training at Circuit of the Americas, IndyCar spring training this year for F1 fans who don't know. Excuse me. IndyCar every year has what they call spring training, and this year it was at our home track, Circuit of the Americas, and they had basically it's a 3-day test before the season starts. And they also do media day. You know, we get to meet all the drivers and interview them and do all that stuff. But we're in Central Texas, usually in the most times in the winter, because it was in mid-February. Most times in the winter, it's relatively mild. A normal day will be 50 degrees, 60 degrees. A nice day will be in the 70s. It was horrible. It was raining. It was like 39 degrees. It was freezing cold the first day. Nobody could, they couldn't even run. A couple guys went out and they just brought the car back in and said, there's nothing we can gain here. I mean, they couldn't get heat in the tires. The track was wet. It was horrible. So there was a lot of standing around that day, right? In the cold, freezing cold. Wind was blowing. It was horrible. We were all bundled up, you know, and hats on and everything. Anyway, I'm walking around trying to find something to talk about, you know, because everybody's just waiting for hours. So I'm kind of bopping around, and I went behind at COTA. There's a pit lane, and then there's a garage area in the back, kind of near the transporters. And there's nobody around. I mean, there's no fans. There's hardly anybody walking around. And I walk out, and about 100 feet away, I just turn and look, and walking up into the back door of a suite, all by himself, is Jimmy Johnson. That's Jimmy Johnson.
Hang on a minute.
And I went, what? So, you know, in my head, I thought, well, I got to find out what's going on. So I started poking around and whatnot. And then later in the day, he was there for the day. Later in the day, I got to talk to him. And I said, hey, are we going to get you in an Indy car? He said, yeah, I'm really, really interested. That's why I'm here. And he said, I don't know if I'll do the ovals, but that's what I'm looking at. So I knew back then he was, and the cool thing about it, I mean, I got to talk to him one-on-one. It wasn't, I just ran into him. So I started asking questions, and he lit up. He was like, yeah, I can't wait to try one of these, you know? And so he's pumped and excited, and he's a very driven guy. I mean, you don't win 7 NASCAR championships by being a, you know, slouch. And so he's very driven. So the deal that he signed with Ganassi Racing is that it's not a full year.
Okay.
He's not going to run the ovals. His wife has already told him no ovals. And there's no sponsor yet. They haven't announced a schedule. They don't know how many races he's going to run. It's like almost like a development deal. They're like, hey, you're ours. They signed him to get him. And they said, look, we'll figure out what we're going to put together later, but we want you. So now you have Scott Dixon there, who's not going anywhere until he retires. You've got Ericsson there, who we don't know how long his contract is, but it looks like it's more than this year. We've got Rosenquist there, who's been really up and down. And Chip Ganassi has a very short fuse, in the sense that you're either winning or I'm looking somewhere else. And Felix, much as great as he is, he's a great driver, but it's been really up and down. And I think his contract's up at the end of this year as well. So, and then you got the Jimmy Johnson factor. So the question for 2021 is who ends up full-time, who ends up part-time, who's there, who's not. You know, Chip Ganassi is wide open. As in the past, he has shown no hesitation to do things out of the box. He could be on the phone with Sergio Perez for all we know. I mean, who knows what could possibly happen. So that team right now is not really, with the exception of Dixon and Jimmy Johnson's development deal, those other 2 seats are kind of not sure what's going to happen next year.
Yeah, it's a real kind of open book situation, and he comes in. Well, he's huge for the fans, and obviously, you know, if it's not a full-time seat, he's not going for the championship or anything. I mean, and let's be honest, with Chip Ganassi Racing, they're behind Scott. Scott's their guy. He's the guy that they keep kind of pushing, and obviously being one away from A.J.Foyt's 7 championships.
Sure.
Hell, you know, they have every right to be putting the chips behind it. But, you know, Jimmy can certainly come in and, you know, ruffle a few feathers. And like you said,
sure,
he almost, I feel, needs this new challenge. Just
sure.
Love of racing. Race drivers love to kind of have something. It's something new that he's like, I've got to get good at this.
Yeah.
And, you know, he'll be good, but, you know, he'll have streaks of room to improve on. And that's going to be exciting, I think, for IndyCar fans to see.
It's going to be fun to watch. It's a huge challenge. I mean, and the hope is, of course, that we bring some NASCAR fans. Some crossover would be nice. We get a lot, but we want more. But it's going to be a huge challenge for him because there's very little testing time in IndyCar, very little track time. And as good as he is, he doesn't have open wheel experience. Things happen a lot faster in an open wheel car than they do in a NASCAR stock car. So a lot of that translates, but sometimes not so much, you know, and it's going to be interesting to see how he does. And I think for him, it's like, hey, I got nothing to lose, and I want to take the challenge. And he's hugely driven. He's one of the most fit motorsport drivers in the world. He's a huge fitness guy. So I don't think he'll have any problem with that transition. You know, the stock cars, you got to, you know, they're a much heavier, bigger car and mostly ovals, but they have power steering and things like that. Whereas an Indy car, you really gotta, you know, you got to be in shape. You got to hustle it. And I think that challenge will be fine for him. But I think the whole air, you know, learning aero and the speed of how things happen and tire deg and all that in IndyCar is going to be a huge challenge for him. But it's going to be great to watch, and I'm sure he'll end up with I'm sure there's some sponsor somewhere that's going to write a nice big check for him, and he's going to run whatever he wants. I'm guessing he might run the Indy 500 just to say that he ran it, but I don't think he's going to run any other ovals. I think it'll be a part-time deal for sure. But I would be worried if Marcus Ericsson, I think, has at least a multi-year contract at Ganassi, but Felix Rosenqvist, not so sure. You know, last year he wrecked some cars, and then he got a little better, and then this year it's kind of been up and down, and Chip just doesn't put up with that for long. So we'll see what happens on that team. That's another one to watch.
Yeah. He's been a bit unlucky. Obviously, first race of the season, chasing down Scott for the lead, but obviously went away from being in a great position, putting Scott to then obviously been in it, and then obviously most recently Mid-Ohio. Not his fault, but being a consequence of the Santino Ferrucci.
Yeah, that was a shame for everybody. Yeah, that the whole first, we won't get into that, but that whole first shame for Ferrucci. It was the same shame for everybody involved. It was just a shame. It was one of those things that just happened. I can't really blame Ferrucci on it. He kind of got stuck in a position where he couldn't do much, and it took out some really good cars, and it ruined Felix's weekend.
Yeah, that's very much our view on it. It was just one of those things where, hey, sometimes crap happens in Indy, in racing, and you know, you just hope you're not on the end of it. And unfortunately, those three drivers were, and
taken out.
Coin Racing, it turned a brilliant outlook on the race to a really poor outlook, didn't it? But we'll move on to one more.
Really quick. I'll finish up for you. I'll go fast.
No problem.
So Ferrucci's coming back for sure.
Okay. Nice.
Okay. Coin Racing. They would love to have Alex Palou, the rookie, back. He's been doing a phenomenal job this year, but that's up in the air right now. Ed Carpenter Racing, Renus VK, he's coming back. The second car, not really sure what's going to happen yet. Maybe Connor Daly. Meyershank Racing is coming back with Jack Harvey, and then Ray Hall again. Looks like to get re-signed the third car. So that kind of rounds out the rest of the field. And if you add all that up and a couple things fall into place, we're looking at 26 or 27 cars next year, which is fabulous for IndyCar.
That's incredible.
Yep.
That is incredible. And what a grid. It'll be in such depth to the grid as well. It's really going to be, I feel like, one of those most competitive IndyCar seasons in a sport. I mean, I was tolling it up. I think we've only had 2 multi-race winners this season in Joseph Newgarden and Scott Dixon, you know, and I think we've had 7 different winners in 9 races, or it might have been more or less now. But yeah,
Dixon winning 4 of them. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, even more diverse. Absent him, it's even more diverse. Yeah.
It really is brilliant. But yes, we'll move on to the Music City GP, going to Nashville for a street race. As an event, this is going to be immense for IndyCar, I think, isn't it?
It's going to be fabulous. For those who don't know or who don't live in the U.S., Nashville, Tennessee is called Music City. And the reason it's called Music City is because it's a huge music city. Lot of recording studios there, very diverse. A lot of everything from rock to country. They kind of bridge both sides of that equation in the music industry. So they're used to a lot of big events and a lot of music events and things happening. IndyCar's been trying to get a race there for about 5 years. They've been working on it, and things finally fell into place for next year, which is going to be fantastic. The course looks really cool. It's really a river goes through Nashville, and there's a bridge over the river. So the course is going to be partly on one side of the river, and then they're going to go across the bridge to another part of the course, and then come back across the bridge, and that'll be a lap. And that's going to be phenomenal. That's going to be really cool. The bridge, I mean, it's so unique, you know. It's going to be really, really fun to watch. And they've been acing for that race for a long time. I think it's going to be well attended, just because of the location, but also the race fans in that part of our country are really big. They're hardcore. Joseph Newgarden is from that area, so he's kind of the ambassador for it, and it's going to be a blast. It's nice to get another race. Now, the flip side of that, we don't know the rest of the schedule for next year, and we, Race Fan Heaven, Mandy and I especially, are sitting on pins and needles this year because there's a lot of talk about Circuit of the Americas not being on the IndyCar schedule next year, and that's our home track. It's literally down the road from us. And so that would be a huge blow to us. Unfortunately, we're praying and hoping that still stays on the calendar. The drivers loved it, but there's a lot of behind the scenes things going on there with that track, and we don't know if it's going to come back. So we're kind of hoping Nashville doesn't take its place. We hope we still have both. But that Nashville track is going to be a blast. Can't wait to see that race. It's going to be. Hope I get to see it in person. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, it just feels. It's going to be brilliant. Like you said, that bridge is going to, it's on a 3-year deal, I believe, with a 2-year option on top of that. Obviously, if things work out. I mean, I know I did watch, I believe David Land covers kind of motorsport and IndyCar on YouTube and stuff. And I believe he was kind of going through some street race, and the history, obviously recently, of street races haven't necessarily had some longevity in it. So fingers crossed Nashville can kind of like buck the trend in a location that would be brilliant to see if they can make it work. But obviously it's a massively private sponsored, and why it's probably taken so long is it is nothing from Nashville itself, is it? It's just all privately funded. I think there may be a little bit from the local government, but yeah, it's mainly a privately funded event. But yeah, Joseph Newgarden was pumped. I think he was saying outside of the Indy 500, this is the GP people are going to want to go to, which well, it's a big statement to make, certainly for sure, but it's something that probably could live up to reputation. But yeah, it would, as an F1 fan, I do like Cotra's work. It's brilliant for F1, and the IndyCar craze is crazy there, but I suppose obviously, you know, they probably need to be a little bit better with track limits, was probably fair to say the last time we raced at Coda.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe not. Let them go, whatever, you know. I figure what the heck, if whatever they can run and not hit anything and go faster, go. I don't care. Take it, whatever. I'm on that side of the fence on that one.
That's the tracks. If you got the track limits, hey, these are racing drivers. They're going to take every kind of millimeter advantage or edge that they can get. So yeah,
of course. Yeah, no, well, we hope Coda's back. It was a great race. It was a great event. The track it's nice that there's a track that both F1 and Indy race on the same track. You can kind of make some comparisons, and that's kind of fun. But of course, I'm biased because I get to go to that race and sleep in my bed at home that weekend, which is kind of cool. And so we really hope it's back. It's big for this area, but there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff with that racetrack right now that, you know, they lost the F1 race this year, and, you know, it's all about the money. You know, it's all about the money. I mean, they took a huge hit and that particular track is also a huge venue. They have a big concert venue right in the middle of it. So during the year, there's all kinds of things going on there. There's outdoor concerts, there's other races, there's a lot going on, and they lost 90% of that revenue this year. So how they're going to make up for that and stay viable is a question that still needs to be answered, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, that's huge, because Well, they're a fairly new track still. 2012, I believe, was its first inclusion on the F1
IndyCar, really new.
Yeah. So that's the problem with older tracks. You can obviously, there's a little budget behind that you've probably got something to go. They haven't really had time to do that, and especially committing to F1, which is hugely expensive layout for a track anyway, because of the hosting fee that they have to pay F1 for doing an F1 race is crazy. But yeah, it would be disappointing, especially in the manner, because with COVID, it would be disappointing that it's just faded out. But
it really
COVID's affected everything.
We're hoping that whatever comes together, and it's a huge, for this area, it's a huge moneymaker. The amount of money that comes into town throughout the year because of that venue for all those things. I mean, they have huge, major concerts there throughout the year as well. It's a beautiful outdoor amphitheater that they have there, and it's a blast. But it would be a huge economic blow to the area to lose that. So we're kind of crossing our fingers that everything's fine and that they get through, and things are back to the way they were, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. Certainly got to hope on that front. But Rick, that's probably a good place for us to round up, unless you've got any other notes of anything possible to add.
You know me, I could talk IndyCar for
that's very true. But we've got to say,
would be very bored and be off the channel in a heartbeat. But I think we covered everything. Of course, we'll talk more. Hopefully, we'll collaborate some more as the season goes on and into the off season, and hopefully generate some IndyCar fans. We love that you guys are doing an IndyCar show, and we're all about bringing more fans into the sport. We can never have enough. We want more. And I think F1 fans, the more F1 fans that watch IndyCar really enjoy it. And we're welcoming with open arms. Come on over. So thank you for the opportunity. It's always great to talk to you, of course. And hopefully we'll talk some more F1 later this year as well. We'll get you on our side, get you on our show to talk F1 where you're the expert, and have some fun with that. So that'll be great. And just keep your eyes open. This off season is going to be crazy.
I think it certainly is. And obviously, it's the perfect place to kind of round off this kind of silly season chat, and a little bit of positive looking ahead at the kind of Music City GP as well. But we'll be back to normal with me and Stephen on next week, and obviously we'll have our usual feature video, and this week's feature video we'll be looking at A.J.Foyt Enterprises, obviously the racing team, and who they are on the channel. So obviously we had last week Who is Scott Dixon, so make sure you guys check that out as well. But thank you again to Rick. Like I said, make sure you go and check out, we'll leave links in the description down below to A Race Fan Heaven, to the kind of podcast, and to the YouTube channel, so drop them a subscribe as well. Rick, it's been brilliant having you on, but that is it from us today. But thank you so much, Rick.
All right, take care.
See you later. So for now, you Indy fans, keep racing.